Kamala Harris went on Fox News. Good move on her part. Good move on her part. You know, between that and Donald Trump ducking out of a bunch of interviews, it does give some nice, like, last moment momentum. It does signal confidence for sure.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Brett.
You know, voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election.
Because they're
and
stupid.
Specifically the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants?
I like, by the way, the rhetoric there, like from over 150 countries. There's only like 200 countries. You know what I mean? It's such like an irrelevant point to make. Like, oh, did you know the illegal immigrants are coming from all the countries? Sure. Okay. It's a small world. What do you want? What does that even mean? I mean, nothing, functionally.
Would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that...
Love the immediate framing, by the way, the idea, like, released. When the Biden-Harris administration releases undocumented immigrants, what they mean is a person declaring migrancy or refugee status has declared themselves at a port of entry. They have been given a court date for the legitimacy of their migrancy to be determined, you know, a court date to determine whether their asylum status will be granted, and they are allowed to move about the country until that court date. Keep in mind that Biden did try to cut down on the delay before the court date substantially by allowing for the budget to be provided for more immigration judges, but Republicans shut that down. And that god-awful far-right immigration bill that was bipartisan until Trump shut it down.
People want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you
now,
just a number? Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Such a manipulative interrogation tactic, Lamau. Yeah, but as Thana points out, the Democrats have set themselves up for this because Democrats have completely conceded this narrative to Republicans. Notice how she's not answering with, hold on, we're not releasing undocumented immigrants where people are allowed to move out before their court date for their asylum status, but they're not undocumented. They are definitionally documented when they do this. But she's completely giving into it because, you know, the Democrats adopted like a 2016 Trump era attitude towards immigration as soon as Biden won in 2020.
Let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions...
I'm not finished. We have
it's a
an
rough
immigration
estimate of 6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question, I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And
you already asked the damn question. You already asked the question. What do you mean? It's important to note the audience, though. No, you can't give in to a right-wing narrative just because right-wingers are listening. You'll always lose that way. Nobody is going to vote for Kamala Harris on immigration, you know, if they're like, okay, well, she's to the right on immigration, but not as to the right as Donald Trump is. Like, if they're to the right on immigration, they're gonna go to Donald Trump, you know? Since you usually despise Fox News Media Player, here it is on YouTube. Oh my God. Oh my God, thank you so much. Thank you. This is the full thing? Thank you.
When you came into...
Shut up. Thank you. I love you.
Madam Vice
You know you can't even pause the Fox News Player with spacebar?
Thank you into the country over the last 3.5 years.
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because...
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions...
I'm not finished. We have
it's a rough estimate of 6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question, I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And when you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies. Most significantly, the policy that required illegal immigrants to be detained through deportation, either in the U.S. or in Mexico. And you switched that policy. They were released from custody awaiting trial. So instead, included in those were a large number of single men, adult men, who went on to commit heinous crimes. So looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate Remain in Mexico at the beginning of your administration?
At the beginning of our administration, within practically hours of taking the oath, the first bill that we offered Congress, before we worked on infrastructure, before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the CHIPS and Science Act, before the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first bill, practically within hours of
You can let in like 50 million immigrants, all of whom contribute to the American dream. One dude will kill someone. It's like, oh, sorry, got to throw them all out. It's crazy. But like, keep in mind logistically what the framing is here. The idea of essentially keeping millions of asylum seekers in concentration camps at the border or in Mexico, which would have cost us probably hundreds of billions over the course of Biden's administration just to maintain, people dying in them, people like sleeping in freezing desert nights under those little like heater blankets, children being separated from parents. I mean, you remember Donald Trump's first administration, it was like a nightmare the whole time. And to maintain that through this administration would have caused infinitely more misery than just allowing the largely peaceful asylum seekers freedom while waiting for their asylum appointment. But like, she can't say that because that would be like sane, you know?
Taking the oath was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the... Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please? But you have to let me finish,
You
please.
had the White House and the House and the Senate, and they didn't bring up that bill.
I'm in the middle of responding to the point you're raising,
okay,
and I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
No one treats Trump like this, by the way. You know fully well that Trump already would have walked out of the interview, but everyone treats him with kid gloves.
We recognized from day one that, to the point of this being your first question, it is a priority for us as a nation and for the American people. And our focus has been on fixing a problem. And from day one, then, we have done a number of things, including to address our asylum system and put more resources, getting more judges, what we needed to do.
Notice how Democrats now only refer to immigration as a burden. They never say anything like, hey, we're America, the shining city on the hill. We should be honored. People love the promise of this country so much they would risk their lives to come here. They benefit our economy. They contribute to our culture. Our culture is a like historical tapestry, a rich tapestry of different cultures' contributions, and I would never have it any other way. Democrats don't talk about immigration like in the positive anymore. Now they're just like, okay, I know they're parasites. I know they're destroying the country, but we're trying the best we can. And we tried to, kick him out, but Donald Trump told the Republicans to not vote for the bill that we had bipartisan support for.
To tighten up penalties and increase penalties for illegal crossings, what we needed to do to deal with points of entry between border entry points. That being said, I do like her jacket. That's the work we did, and we worked on supporting what was a bipartisan effort, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress, to actually strengthen the border. That border bill would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border, which is why I believe the Border Patrol agents supported the bill. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States, which is a scourge affecting people of every background, every geographic.
Fentanyl is not coming in through undocumented immigrants. Obviously, why would anyone hinge their multi-billion-dollar drug trade on the potential of, Border Patrol catching a guy with a bunch of fent crammed up a condom in his asshole? It's mostly, just shiploads brought through, local police collaborating, corruption. Ridiculous.
Graphic location in our country, killing people. It would have allowed us to put more resources into prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, which I have done as the Attorney General, former Attorney General of a border state.
Madam Vice President, a couple of things.
Prosecuted trafficking of drugs, guns, and human beings. And Donald Trump, but let me just finish.
Six Democrats voted against that bill.
Learned about that bill and told them to kill it because he preferred to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And in this election, this is rightly a discussion that the American people want to have. And what they want...
And notice, she can't really provide an answer because all she can really do is provide, like what I said, a lighter version of Trump's framework, where she's basically saying, yeah, we agree, we're trying to deal with the threat they pose. We're just not doing as bad of a job of it as Trump says we are. Just very disappointing, you know?
Are solutions, and they want a president of the United States who's not playing political games with the issue,
I hear you,
but actually is focused on fixing it.
6 Democrats voted against that bill. It would have allowed 1.8 million illegal immigrants into the country a year. A lot of conservatives had a problem with it. These are the 6 Democrats. But more importantly, back to the original premise, Jocelyn Nungari, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, they are young women who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were...
This is politics now. Like, we're dealing with a country with 1/3 of a billion people. Millions of people immigrate. Every year, millions die, millions are born. Like, oh, did you know that in, like, of the tens of thousands of murders that happened this year, here are, like, some white women. I don't know if they're white, whatever. The one in the middle is pretty blinding me out for the monitor with my brightness turned all the way down. Like answer to that, it's literally the same as it was like 100 years ago. Forget statistics, forget sociology. Here's a picture of a murdered white woman. This is what motivates people, you know? You could get, it's like crime in the inner city, right? Like 100 black people can die due to criminal gangs, violence, you know, police misconduct, drugs, whatever. One white chick dies, whole police precincts on it, you know? It's same as it ever was.
Released at the beginning of the administration, well before a negotiated bipartisan bill. Former President Clinton actually referred to Laken Riley Sunday campaigning for you in Georgia, saying if those men had been properly vetted, Laken Riley probably would not have been killed. So if it wouldn't have happened, this is well before any negotiation. This is well before Donald Trump got involved in the politics. This is a specific policy decision by your administration. You
decided to let those women be killed. Never mind that literally all decisions anyone could make at a federal level are going to involve the movement of people and goods that invariably lead to consequences, and there's no way to prevent everyone from... Like, people would be murdered in Mexico if they were forced to stay there. Though that wouldn't matter, right? Because they'd be like foreigners in Mexico, yeah.
To release these men into the country. So what I'm saying to you, do you owe
Brett,
those families an apology?
Let me just say, first of all, those are tragic cases. There's no question about that. There is no question about that.
As though people born in America don't commit crimes. Yeah, you might as well say, like, your decision to increase, like, the birth rate by providing people the affordable resources they need to like, buy housing, that led to an increase in the birth rate. Those people then grew up and murdered people. Your policy created this.
And I can't imagine the pain that the families of those victims have experienced for a loss that should not have occurred. So that is true. It is also true that if a border security had actually been passed 9 months ago, it would be 9 months that we would have had more border agents at the border, more support for the folks who are working around the clock trying to hold it all together.
Madam Vice President.
To ensure that no future harm would occur. And this election in 20 days will determine whether we have a president of the United States who actually cares more about fixing a problem, even if it is not to their political advantage in an election, because there was a solution, Brett.
Madam Vice President, it was a policy decision in the early part of your administration. I will let one of the mothers talk about it. Take a listen.
There's, respectfully, and you can call me, you know, inconsiderate, I don't care. Is the mother like a sociologist? Does she have access to some like data that I don't have access to? Is there something new that I'm going to learn? Or is what I'm going to learn that it was sad when your daughter died? Yeah, no shit. Unless you like hated your daughter, I don't think you did. My assumption was that it was sad.
Because of the Biden-Harris administration open border policies catch and release, they were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program. This meant that they were released into the United States. It was not even a full 3 weeks later that they would take my daughter, Jocelyn Nungari's life. I believe the Biden-Harris administration open border policies are responsible for the death of my daughter.
That's the early days. So do you owe them an apology?
No.
I will tell you that I am so sorry for her loss. I'm so sorry for her loss, sincerely. But let's talk about what is happening right now with an individual who does not want to participate in solutions. Let's talk about that as well.
This obsession with civility also really gets in the way of her making incisive, like, comebacks. You know, like, do you want to talk about gun deaths? Like, is every Republican who's ever voted against any gun control bill responsible for every death that has ever happened to any firearm user? Don't be ridiculous. Obviously, the death was a tragedy, and it is, as are many things, a consequence of broader policies. I'm trying to fix this up as best as I can. Donald Trump is trying to destroy it for political gain. Let's talk about what we can do now. Like, but again, like, all she can really offer here is like, I'm sorry, we're moving forward, I'm sorry, we're moving forward, I'm sorry. You know,
in all fairness, I told you, I feel awful for what she and her family have experienced.
During that time, you said repeatedly that the border was secure. When in your mind did it start becoming a crisis?
The nanosecond that Biden got inaugurated and the messaging changed completely.
I think we've had a broken immigration system transcending, by the way, Donald Trump's administration even before. Let's all be honest about that. I have no pride in saying that this is a perfect immigration system. I've been clear, I think we all are, that it needs to be fixed. We need more. I was just down at the border talking with border agents, and they will tell you, and I'm sure you probably, I know you investigate and you are a serious journalist, they will tell you we need more judges. We need to process those cases faster. We need the support for those cases that should be prosecuted. They need more resources, and Congress ultimately is the only place that's going to get fixed, Brett. Well, that's how this system works.
That's the premise of this question. There were 90-plus executive orders that were rescinded in the first days. Many of those were Trump border policies. I'm not going to stay here because there's other things to talk about, but you frequently talk to the Border Patrol Union for support of that bipartisan bill, and they did. They supported it. But they also just endorsed Donald Trump and said, you've been, quote, a failure with border security. Why do you think they said that?
I think they're frustrated, and I get
because they're evil. I'm just fronting that one out there, just like from a professional angle, probably.
Get it? They want support. They want support, and that's what that border security bill would have done.
Also, like, again, the current framing where Democrats have to be, because they're institutionalists, like, Donald Trump can attack anyone and he's fine. He's attacked the military, he's attacked, like, Capitol Police, no one gives a shit. Kamala Harris has to get down on her hands and knees and lick the boots of cops, of the Border Patrol. Like, it's genuinely insane. Border Patrol, those are insane. The Border Patrol agents, they're worse than the average cop, and the cops are already pretty bad.
These guys down at the border, these men and women, they're working hard. They're working around the clock. I get it.
There's a lot of people that look back at what you said in 2019 when you first ran for president. And there have been changes, and you've talked about some of them. When it comes to immigration, you supported allowing immigrants in the country illegally to apply for driver's license, to qualify for free tuition at universities, to be enrolled in free health care. Do you still support those things?
Listen, that was 5 years ago, and I'm very clear that I will follow.
That was 5 years ago, and I have been folded into the mainstream Democratic apparatus. I can no longer have ambitions beyond maintaining the status quo. Next question.
The law. I have made that statement over and over again, and as Vice President of the United States, that's exactly what I've done, not to mention before.
If that's the case, you chose a running mate, Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, who signed those very things into state law. So do you support that?
We are very clear, and I am very clear, as is Tim Walz, that we must support and enforce federal law, and that is exactly what we will do.
So decriminalizing border crossings, like you said in 2019.
I do not believe in decriminalizing border crossings, and I've not done that as vice president. I will not do that as president.
Border crossings are literally not a crime in compliance with international law. Part of the asylum-seeking process involves crossing the border to declare your asylum status at a port of entry or other appropriate facility. Border crossing is literally definitionally not a crime.
So these are evolutions that you've had.
But let's be very clear. I'm the only person who's running for president who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations, from the Sinaloa cartel to the
The
Guadalajara.
Dems are literally just Bush Republicans? Well, no, because Democrats right now are to the right of where Bush was on immigration. Right now, Democrats are at about the same point Trump was back in 2016 with regards to immigration. The border bill that they pushed for, that Trump sank, is like significantly to the right of any congressional bill with regards to like powers to shut down. Yeah, the border bill has some crazy shit in there, man. That was not, if the border bill was just like, let's allocate more money to Border Patrol and let's allocate more money to immigration courts so they can process asylum claims more, like, faster, that would be one thing. I would probably agree with that bill. Like, I hate Border Patrol, but if it means getting like a few hundred more immigration judges going through asylum cases as fast as possible, okay, like, all right, it's like a triage situation, that would be an improvement. But some of the stuff in there, man.
Guadalajara cartel to people who have trafficked in guns, drugs, and human beings. I have spent a significant part of my career going after people who present a threat to the safety of the American people and cross our border with the intent of doing us harm and cross our border illegally. And I will do that work as vice president. I take that work quite seriously.
This is a time when voters, especially here in Pennsylvania, are inundated with commercials and ads. They just want it to stop.
Right, Annie. My issue, though, is that they never distinguish between, like, a legitimate or illegitimate border crossing. They just talk about it like it's always a cross, which I agree. Like, you can cross and then it'd be unlawful for you to reside in the country without, like, applying for asylum status. But they never talk about that. It's like no one in American politics ever acknowledges that. You know what I mean?
Because it's every commercial. But many of them add noise, but a few of them seem to break through. This particular one from the Trump campaign has gotten a lot of attention.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
So are you still in support of using
unironically based and like objectively true? Trans affirming healthcare is necessary healthcare. It's not just cosmetic. And if you have imprisoned someone, you have shouldered the responsibility of their medical needs. Just simple as, like, a very clear, it just like a straightforward, it's not even like an ideologically motivated claim. It's just a straightforward interpretation of existing psychological, medical and legal practice. It's pretty simple.
Taxpayer dollars to help prison inmates or detained illegal aliens to transition to another gender.
I will follow the law, and it's a law that Donald Trump actually followed. You're probably familiar with, now it's a public report, that under Donald Trump's administration, these surgeries were available on a medical necessity basis to people in the federal prison system. And I think, frankly, that ad from the Trump campaign is a little bit of like throwing, stones when you're living in a glass house.
The Trump aides say that
This is a fine answer. I don't expect her to go on like waving the trans flag or whatever. So far, this is an acceptable answer.
Never advocated for that prison policy, and no gender transition surgeries
you know what? You got to take responsible for what happened in your administration.
Yeah, no surgeries happened in this presidency.
It's in black and white.
Would you still advocate for using taxpayer dollars for gender reassignment surgeries?
I will follow the law, just as I think Donald Trump would say he did.
You would have a say as president.
Like I said, I think he spent $20 million on those ads, trying to create a sense of fear in the voters because he actually has no plan in this election that is about focusing on the needs of the American people. Whereas, at $20 million on that ad, on an issue that, as it relates to the biggest issues that affect the American people, it's really quite remote. And again, I wish she was allowed to say stuff like, this is insane. Like, at some point, it'd be cool for her to, just like, genuinely insane with all the problems Americans are facing, that Trump's team is desperately trying to make issues out of non-existing. Like, how are you affected by this in any way, shape, or form? How is anyone affected by this, That's Tim Walz's job to say out loud. Yeah. Though he's kind of toned it down. Sometimes they let him off the leash a bit.
I don't know.
Policy was no different. Look at where we are, though.
They say
on
it was
plans for
different,
the
but
American
we'll move
people,
on.
I'm offering a plan to deal with affordable housing. I'm offering a plan to deal with what we need to do to strengthen small businesses, which are the backbone of America's economy. I am offering a plan that is about taking care of young parents and giving them the support they need. My plans for the economy will strengthen the economy, as have been reviewed by 16 Nobel laureates, Goldman Sachs, Moody's, and recently the Wall Street Journal, which have all studied our plans and have indicated my plans for our economy would strengthen our economy, his would make them weaker,
Why do you
would
think more
ignite
people say-
inflation and invite a recession by the middle of next year. Those are the facts.
Why do you think more people say they trust him on the economy than they trust you?
I think that when you look at an analysis of our plans for what we would do as President of the United States, it has been clear to those who study and understand how economic policy works that moving forward, because I do believe the American people are ready to turn the page on the divisiveness and the type of rhetoric that has come out of Donald Trump. People are ready to chart a new way forward, and they want a president who has a plan for the future.
This rhetoric would work if it wasn't for the fact that she is obviously herself still mired in the bullshit of the past. I don't think this, like, we're moving forward bit is necessarily a bad bit. I think it works pretty well. We're not going back, right? Even though they're not saying that as much anymore because it was too cool for the Democrats. But she won't answer questions directly or be insistent because she sticks to the talking points so effectively. This was the thing that made Bernie Sanders different. This was the thing that made Bernie Sanders so much better. It was that he stuck to the talking points, but it wasn't because he was like workshopping them to a smooth shine. He wasn't like disingenuously avoiding other positions with them. He was just like really committed to those. It came across as earnest and authentic and genuine, not like with her where she's just kind of, because she hasn't like directly answered any of the questions he's asked. His questions have been bullshit, but she can't call them bullshit, even though they are.
And a plan that is sound and will strengthen our country. My plan for the economy does exactly that. His plan would be, again, to give tax cuts to billionaires and the biggest corporations in our country and blow up our deficit.
It's interesting you said turn the page, Madam Vice President. You were asked on 2 different shows last week what, if anything, you would do differently than President Biden. Here's what you said.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been
just phenomenal. Biden polling like incredibly low. You know this question is going to be asked. Yeah, I don't think anything is going to be different.
a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Under a Harris administration, what would the major changes be, and what would stay the same?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm obviously not Joe Biden.
I noticed.
And so that would be one change in terms of...
Wow.
But also, I think it's important to say with, 28 days to go, I'm not Donald Trump.
Wow.
So you're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My president...
This is like a sickening weakness of her campaign. It is genuinely embarrassing. Joe Biden is the guy you replaced at the front of the ticket. He is not polling well right now. He was certainly going to lose to Trump. His approval rating is not good, and you're asked multiple times what you would do differently, and you have no answer to it, except like, haha. She actually does answer it differently here. Well, that's great, but too little too late. That just makes you look like you're inconsistent,
will not be
We're not going back. We're actually staying exactly where we are right now.
Continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes in to office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership. I, for example, am someone who has not spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C. I invite ideas, whether it be from the Republicans who are supporting me, who were just on stage with me minutes ago.
Okay, first thing different from Joe Biden. I will be more bipartisan. I will court the opinions of Republicans more. Great. So far, so good. And
the business sector.
And the business. Oh, that's great. Thank you. That's exactly where we need to get fresh new ideas from. Republicans and capital. Okay, all right.
Others who can contribute to the decisions that I make about, for example, my plan for increasing the supply of housing in America and bringing down the cost of housing, addressing the issue of small businesses, which is about working with the private sector to bring more capital and access to capital to our small business leaders, including my plan for a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and for small businesses, extending the tax deduction from $5,000 to $50,000.
We've heard a lot about those plans in recent days. Your campaign slogan is a new way forward, and it's time to turn the page. You've been vice president for 3.5 years, so what are you turning the page from?
Well, first of all, turning the page from the last decade.
Yeah, it's so fucking pathetic, dude. Had Trump just won in 2020, we'd be in a safer place, I feel. Honestly, you might not be wrong. If Trump had just continued in from 2020 with like a stalemated Congress, it's possible that it would have just burnt itself out and through. The party never would have consolidated. He would have just continued to bumble his way through this presidency rather than Biden giving them 4 years to consolidate, to come up with all this, for Elon to fall in line, to provide the funding and everything. And the lack of, I mean, it's genuinely pathetic, that Kamala Harris is oh yeah, we're moving forward. Oh yeah, we're turning the page. We're like, we're not going back. But things will be fundamentally the same. We literally cannot do anything to differentiate ourselves from Joe Biden. That's great.
In which we have been burdened with the kind of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump that has been designed and implemented to divide our country and have Americans literally point fingers at each other. Rhetoric and an approach to leadership that suggests that the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down instead of what we all know.
So nothing, no difference then, just the same, no difference. Just the continual centrist Democrat slop with no fundamental changes to policy, literally nothing new. Nothing has changed since Hillary Clinton, man. Or I guess since Joe Biden. But Joe Biden had the benefit of running against an incumbent Trump after Trump, blustered his way through 4 years. Maybe this works in the median voter. No, I promise you it doesn't. It literally doesn't. Democrats do incredibly poorly, despite all the issues they ostensibly represent, polling better in referendums. They do remarkably badly for the positions they hold.
The strength of leadership is based on who you lift up. The strength of an American president, which is one who understands that the vast majority of us.
This is for the Fox audience, though. Yeah, you guys need to understand this. This is the literal worst way to act to a Fox audience. The only Democrat who did well in a Fox News environment was Bernie Sanders in that Fox News town hall. And that's because he's him. This is the worst way you could act. She comes across as airy, disingenuous, repeating the same old bullshit. Appealing to the right isn't how you win over right-wingers.
Have more in common than what separates us.
Madam Vice President, more than 70% of people
that is about turning the page on rhetoric that people are frankly exhausted of, Brett.
More than 70% of people tell.
People are exhausted of do-nothing liberal centrism that appeals to no one and, motivates people in no way other than being anti-Trump.
The country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
This comes across as really weak and pathetic. You guys have to understand that, right? To a Fox News audience as well, you think the average Trump supporter is going to hear this and go, wow, you're right. I am sick and tired of the Trump-led division. Ugh.
You've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam Vice President.
You and I both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade, people have become.
Power.
But listen, Over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump, former defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice president, one, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full-time...
Also notice how, like, same as it always was, same with Biden and Hillary Clinton, she can't say anything positive about herself, she's just attacking Trump. Everyone's heard this before. You know, you need inspiring leadership, and all she really has to offer here is like, well, we're not Trump. Like, I mean, she literally said that. It's about appealing to the independent. Independents don't like this. I promise you, independents don't like this. The myth of the centrist independent is just that, a myth. There are no centrists. The group has never existed. The only people who call themselves centrists are right-wingers who are pretending not to be. There are no centrists. None. Zero. Zero centrists in the country. They don't exist. There are people who will see this who are not necessarily inclined towards Trump, who will not be motivated to vote for Kamala Harris because she comes across as disingenuous, insincere, with no real policy proposals or differences between her and Joe Biden.
Meaning and engaging in personal grievances and it being about him instead of the American people. People are tired of that.
If that's the case, why is half the country supporting him? Why is he beating you in a lot of swing states? Why, if he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States? Why is that happening?
This is an election for president of the United States. It's not supposed to be easy.
I know, but
it's not supposed to be. It is not supposed to be a cakewalk for anyone.
So are they misguided, the 50%?
Listen,
are they stupid? What is it?
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact...
Damn, Vosh, everyone else seemed to said Kamala slam dunked this Fox interview. Let me guess, you heard that from liberals? It's not good, man. She won't even push back against people voting for him. Holy shit. Yeah, she literally won't even say, like, because I think your network constantly misinforms them. You know, like, no stones at all. Literally none. Like, Joe Biden had more stones when it came to criticizing Fox News than Kamala Harris does. You know? Stoneless. Well, why are so many people voting for Trump? Because people are afraid and their fears are stoked by a constant misinformation campaign. Remember Springfield? Remember Aurora? Like this constant cycle of people being told they should be terrified when in reality, crime is down, inflation is down, the country is headed in a good direction, I want to take it in a better one. But she can't say that because that would require stones.
If you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phone.
The interview apologized for this specific part. He plays the wrong clip. Huh? Wait.
Suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within.
Oh, okay, yeah. They played... Okay, yeah, it seems like, yeah, the clip was irrelevant, which means that Kamala Harris is responding off the cuff here.
That he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you.
That was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know...
Harris's team pulled the full clip, selectively edited the clip of Trump they played during their Harris interview, omitted the part where he called Americans who don't support him.
How he responded. We asked that question to the... Former president today, Harris Faulkner, had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
Kamala Harris has said you sounded unhinged and unchecked power is in our future. What do you say about that?
I thought it was a nice presentation. I wasn't unhinged. You know what they are? They're a party of sound bites. Somebody asked me, can they be brought together? You know, I never thought, really, I wasn't thinking like they could, because they're very, very different. And it is the enemy from within, and they're very dangerous. They're Marxists and communists and fascists, and they're sick. I use a guy like Adam Schiff because they made up the Russia hoax. It took 2 years to solve the problem. Absolutely nothing was done wrong, et cetera, et cetera. They're dangerous for our country. We have China, we have Russia, we have all these countries. If you have a smart president, they can all be handled. The more difficult are, the Pelosi's, these people, they're so sick and they're so evil. If they would spend their time trying to make America great again, it would be so easy to make this country great. But when I heard about that, they were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's terrible.
God, his brain is soup.
Know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it. And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
He's quoted in the Bob Woodward book that way, yes. Let me ask you this, Madam
That was a fine enough answer, I suppose, given the circumstances.
Vice President, you call Donald Trump. You call Donald Trump. He's misguided. You say now
he's unstable. He is unstable, Brett.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to
I love journalism.
The Situation Room. And he has the judgment.
Yeah, when did you stop beating your wife? Ask questions. Literally, like, again, it's like genuinely it should be arrested. The interviewer. It's crazy. Sorry, Vosh, this is an absolute win for Harris. You have to win over more than your average leftist. Sorry, leftist. A liberal. You have to accept our understanding of what, like, a victorious campaign is. Shits out Hillary Clinton. What are you talking about? You people, this is your second message in chat? Whatever, you can stick around. I don't even care anymore. That's fine.
And the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And Donald Trump
but
is.
You talked about it.
And Donald Trump
After George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years.
Well, Annie, it's the same issue as always, right? Where, like, Democrats come across as spineless because they have two sets of standards when Trump does it versus when we do it. Biden should have never been allowed to run at all. He was always the, like, Democrat, corpo-pushed, compromise candidate that people only voted for because they thought that it was like an Ouroboros of justification where he'll win because we're choosing him as the electable candidate, because he'll win because we're choosing him as the electable candidate. And he was ancient back then. And then they had to pretend. Then, despite him obviously like needing to only be a one-term candidate, he ran for a second one like a lunatic. And now it's like, oh yeah, well, we're now suddenly opposed to Trump being old.
You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national security community, have all spoken out. Even people who worked for him in the Oval Office, worked with him in the Situation Room, and have said he is unfit and dangerous and should never be president of the...
Here's another great example of how incompetent liberals are at appealing to people who aren't already on their side. You guys have to understand, given the current political climate, there is nothing on earth less convincing to a conservative than Kamala Harris saying, yeah, these members of the deep state don't think Trump should be allowed to be president again. Are you insane? I know what'll convince this group of lunatic cultist conspiracy theorists. What if all the people that Donald Trump has spent a decade, attacking for being part of the deep state, what if I said that they don't like Trump? She might as well go out there and say, he's the guy who insulted Hillary Clinton. Ridiculous.
The United States again, including his former vice president, which is why the job was open for him to choose another running mate. So that is a fact. That is a fact.
Madam Vice President.
Isn't that group irredeemable? You people are cruising for a bruising. I need you guys to square the circle a little bit and not get me to, reconcile. I can't be here soldering the frayed circuits of your broken mind every single time I make two statements that can't that are not literally A equals B, B equals C, therefore A equals C. You need to do a little bit of work yourself. Okay? Populist rhetoric will appeal to independents. If you want to appeal to Trump-leaning people who are not super sold on Trump, then you're not going to do so by citing the opinion of people that Trump doesn't like. You need to talk about stuff he's done and stuff he's done to hurt the American people. Not, hey, this group of individuals that I've read 57 Fox News articles against, it says that they don't like Trump.
Two more things. You were asked on 60 Minutes about the biggest threat that the world faces, that the U.S. faces. This is what you said.
Which foreign country do you consider to be our greatest adversary?
I think there's an obvious one in mind, which is Iran. Iran has American blood on their hands, okay? This attack on Israel, 200 ballistic missiles.
Don't copyright me.
What we need to do
to
ensure that Iran never achieves the ability to be a nuclear power, that is one of my highest priorities.
Honestly, right now, the greatest foreign adversary is probably Israel.
A number of experts thought you would say China. The FBI director had said that. But you said Iran. If that's the case, what do you say to critics who look at the actions of your administration and say you're not acting like Iran is the #1 threat?
This is I'm sorry. If Hillary Clinton loses over this marginal thing, it's Muslims in Michigan vote against her because of this or whatever, you deserved it. I'm sorry. You're insane. You're genuinely insane. Give more to Israel. $500 trillion billion bajillion dollars to Israel. Who cares anymore? Whatever. Who the f cares? Did I say Hillary Clinton? I don't even care. Who cares?
Well, I will tell you most recently, whether it was in April or in October, and then several hours on each occasion, that Iran posed a threat to Israel. I was there, most recently in the Situation Room, in the most recent attack.
Don't care.
Working with the heads of our military.
Don't care.
And doing what America must always do.
Don't care.
Defend and to support Israel in its requirement to defend its...
Insane question, man. What do you think is the greatest foreign threat to America? Well, Israel is threatened greatly by Iran. Citation needed.
And to give American support to be able to allow Israel to have the resources to defend itself against attack, including from Iran and Iran's terrorist proxies in the region.
Right.
And that
but those
is
proxies were getting funded
my
by
commitment
Iran.
to that is unyielding and unwavering.
Critics just say that you either relaxed or failed to enforce sanctions on Iran, allowing all of this money to flow into Iran, like billions.
Let's go back to Donald Trump, who pulled out of a deal that would have actually put Iran in check.
The estimates in billions.
It was during Donald Trump's
that
administration
go towards
that
the Iran regime.
That we had an American military base that was attacked.
I like the implication that America is responsible for Iran making money selling oil to Russia. Or what? Whoever. It's Russia, right? They're trading with Russia? Or is it China? What's their main revenue stream?
Where American soldiers suffered traumatic brain injuries, and Donald Trump dismissed them as headaches, not to mention how Donald Trump has treated and talked about America's military and military service people, calling them suckers and losers,
Hamas,
has diminished the significance.
We're talking over each other. I apologize.
Well, I would like that we would have a conversation that is grounded in full assessment of the facts, which includes, I think this interview is supposed to be about the choices that your viewers should be presented about this election.
That's true,
and the contrast is important.
Yes, ma'am.
And on the subject of Iran, I am offering what should be an important contrast that is presented for folks to make.
Interrupts her to say we're speaking over each other. I just like, what am I even supposed to say here? The idea that Iran is the greatest threat to America is a laughable, like genuinely like a joke of an answer, said only to indicate fealty to Israel. That is literally it. Like the only reason you would say that is to bow down on your hands and knees and you know, kiss Netanyahu's boots. Insane. Genuinely like a psychotic thing to say. It's wild, but you know, like whatever, man. Who gives a shit? We're in a murder-suicide cult with Israel. Who cares?
A decision
and there are critics
that they feel
who look at what the administration did and say and think differently. Madam Vice President, they're wrapping me very hard here. I hope you got to say.
Yeah, they're gonna on November 4th. Netanyahu is going to launch like a massive salvo of American missiles at Iran, and then he's going to say only Donald Trump can prevent Iran from striking us or something like that, and then that'll be the pivotal swing and Trump will win. It's great. Phenomenal stuff.
What you wanted to say about Donald Trump, there are a lot of things.
There's more to say. I have
there
much more to
are
say,
a lot
actually.
of things that people want to learn about you and your policies, and that's why
I invite everyone
here.
to go to kamalaharris.com, and you will see that I have 80 pages of policies that are quite comprehensive and should be accessible to anyone who would like to read them, and it includes what I intend to do about affordable.
They're also openly saying they might change targets at the 11th hour, probably switching it to nuclear sites last minute. That's great, man. That's phenomenal. That's spectacular. Can't wait.
Housing, what I intend to do about small businesses, what I do.
And that's why we invited you here
our economy,
to see where you were in 2019 and where you are now.
America's military and ensure we have the most lethal and best fighting force in the world.
Madam Vice President,
and
they're giving me a hard rap
Well,
here.
I thank you for the time.
I thank you for the time.
It's good to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey,
that's cool. Democrats already laying the anti-union groundwork. They got to Vox. That's good. That's good. Hate Fox so much. I mean, a lot of this is just on Kamala Harris, you know? And the Dems. Why would anyone say she kicked ass anywhere in that? I don't know, man. Just believe that she did kick ass so she wins rather than Trump, okay? Reality doesn't matter. Don't get it twisted. So can we do something fun now? You tuned in to the private website of the political streamer 2.5 weeks before an election. What are you doing? Me showing up at the, like, morgue? Yeah, you guys ready to have a good time?